Welcome to Barnbird Network on ZingoTV channel 250. Please remember to download both the Barnbird and ZingoTV apps from respective iOS and Android app stores, as both apps are absolutely free. And while you download, please make sure to rate and leave a comment because we want to hear from you people. Yes, we do. ZingoTV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks. And Roku Roshi sticks are also available on all smart TVs from 2016 and forward. So welcome, folks, to the third edition of the Martial Arts High Performance Show, with our guests today being ZINGOTV Khan and Akmal Farah for joining us here today. Minus Matt Ross, he couldn't make it unfortunately last minute, but we'll get him again soon. Don't worry, we'll get him back real soon. Okay, so let's introduce these two very cool folks here we got on the show. So first, he is a former 4-time Canadian champion in Taekwondo. He's also 11-time Ontario champion, a former competitor in the World Championships from 1997 to 2007. Excuse me there, a little bit of coffee going the wrong vocal pipe here. And he's also a former Taekwondo Team Canada captain. He's also the owner and instructor of Authentic Taekwondo in Markham, Ontario. Please welcome the one, the only Akmal Farah. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming on again. Real pleasure once again. And next, our next cool guest here. He's fought both amateur and professional level Muay Thai. He's also the 2003 silver medalist in the WMF World Championships in Thailand. He has 11 years experience training high-level performance athletes and developed high-level athletes in Muay Thai for North America, over the years. He's also the owner of Warriors Muay Thai. Please welcome the one, the only ZINGOTV Khan.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here. Great to be back. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Excellent. Let's start off really easy here. Very simple question. How was the holidays, guys? How was your holidays? I'll start with Akmal first.
So I take holidays very seriously. I did nothing.
And so you should.
It was really good. You know what? The holidays was exceptional this year. Santa was very generous.
Good.
My kids loved it, so it was a great Christmas and a great holiday so far.
Great. That's always good to hear, especially after a really tough year we all had this past 2020. It's good you guys, a good Christmas to finish off on. And how about you, ZINGOTV? How was your holidays?
Fantastic. I have 4 kids at home and spent lots of time with them. And the lockdowns in general, I know there's a lot of people who are depressed and sad about it, but for me, I've really enjoyed this extra time with my family. And even if it's just going for long walks at night and admiring the decorations and the lights, and just everyone's always in a good mood at this time of year.
Yeah.
It was great. Maybe too many cookies, but back to the grind now.
Well, you're forgiven for that. That's the holidays for you. A lot of consumption. Good consumption. So guys, before I get started on our first topic here, really kind of touch off before. What are your views and your hopes for 2021 after coming off of a year like 2020? So what are your hopes and your views for 2021? I'll start with Akmal again.
So we expect the worst and hope for the best.
Well put.
It's like we're planning a lot of things for the upcoming year. We've developed a lot of different programs, but at the same time, just looking at the theoretical vaccination that they're going to be giving in phase 1 and phase 2, it is theoretical, right? They're supposed to have all the frontline workers vaccinated by the end of March, and then having everybody who's 75 and older by June, something like that. And then, for third phase is basically everybody else. And this is given that everything works smoothly for them to have this rolled out effectively. And we've never done anything like this before. So to have it rolled out perfectly and to have everything kind of like just go back to normal, I think we're kind of, maybe we're fooling ourselves, but you know what? We're hoping for the best, and we have our fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes. So my hopes for the new year is to get back to normalcy as soon as we can, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that.
Well said. Well said. And how about you, ZINGOTV? What's your hopes and your views for 2021?
Yeah, well, hopes definitely back to normal-ish or something close to that. I agree with Akmal that I think we'd be maybe a little overambitious to think that a few months of rolling out the vaccination is going to bring us back to complete normal and the way things were before last year. Can't even say
Yeah.
last year anymore. All right, yeah, it's a long program. I'm actually, like my other business, I do recruitment, and our company is actually deeply involved in the USA with the rollout of the vaccination there. We're hiring thousands of pharmacists and nurses across from Alaska to Hawaii to Puerto Rico and all the states in between. We're involved in the recruitment of those. So I get to like every day speak to nurses, frontline workers, and pharmacists that are involved in this. And it sounds like it's a pretty lengthy program, and the way it's being phased out, at least in the USA, is it's not going to have a dramatic effect on the day-to-day, everyday population overnight. And
Yeah.
even if it does, then we don't know like how long is it going to keep people immune, how effective is it, what percentage of the population is actually going to opt into it, and even if the majority of people are vaccinated, does that mean governments are going to allow us to like go back to sparring and training and everything else we like to do? Are we still going to have to wear masks? There's still so much up in the air. I
Yeah.
mean, it's good that we're making progress in the right direction with having a vaccine, but who's to say how fast things will go back to normal and what that new normal is really going to look like? So
Correct.
just hope
Yeah.
and wish for the best and
No,
roll with it.
exactly.
Roll with the
You're right.
punches.
You're right, because no one's have to have the answers right now, and we all wish we had an answer right now, or a time frame right now would be fantastic. But yeah, we're on the same boat of hoping that this is all going to work out quickly and smoothly as possible, and safely as possible as well as we move forward here
And the other
in this
problem
new
is, I
year.
think a lot of people will also, they're starting to get a bit tired of just being socially distanced, right?
Yeah.
There's, a majority of people have not been vaccinated yet. So you know what? As President-elect Joe Biden said, it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. I think, the numbers from Christmas are going to start to come out. I think a lot of people were still seeing each other, and it's hard. We're social creatures. We want to be around
true.
other people. Obviously everybody's trying their best to stay apart as much as they can. But at the end of the day, it's going to be really tough, until the vaccination, like Zubair said, is going to come out and be effective. And, there's going to be a lot of other issues that's going to arise. So
Second strand.
Yeah, that's
Oh
true.
my God, they detected that here in like, what is it, Durham region? That second strand, that new strand of COVID that came out in the UK is apparently now here.
Yeah, I heard the same thing too. Yeah,
Scary stuff. Yeah.
exactly. More concerns. So no.
How about you, Coach Noel? What are your hopes and
Well, thanks for asking me the question, man.
value your opinion?
Well, actually, I feel the same way. Like, I mean, I'm really hoping this vaccine comes through and we see results, positive results, and safe results as soon as we can. Because I'm really anxious. This is for not just for myself, but it's for everybody, whether entrepreneurs or in business, who are more deeply affected by it than myself. Like, I learned how to adapt with it because I don't really own a business, so I have more freedoms compared to most people that I know, like yourselves, where you're kind of in a tough position. So it's kind of good to have that kind of somewhat freedom. But I'm really hoping for people like yourselves, where you can actually move ahead, start planning, start moving forward with your businesses and your plans, and of course with your athletes. And same with myself. Comes to fighting, I want to get back to competition again. I get back to planning for the going into the next Olympic trials as far as what's happening next. And so, yeah, I just want to see everybody can move on healthy and quickly and safely as possible. That's my wishes for the year.
Well said.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for the most, for sure. There's a better 2021. That's what I'm hoping for the most. So let's move on to some more serious questions. It's actually I want to touch this question with you guys before, but we didn't have enough time before. And the question is simply this: is really comes down to is what's your thoughts on faith and competitive training tied together as one? What are your thoughts, guys? And I'll start with Akmal first.
I would like to give Zubair this opportunity to go
Okay,
first.
sure, we can do that. I'm
Yeah.
flexible.
No. You guys are both more experienced than me. And again, going back to faith, in my faith, if you have more experience and you're older and wiser, you should have the floor first. So I want to throw that back to you guys. Since we're talking about faith, it wouldn't feel right for me to go first. I'd like maybe Akmal to, unless you don't want to.
Dr. Akmal.
Right?
It's a
Please.
hot seat appearance already.
So it's a deep topic. I really wish Coach Matt was online because it's something we've discussed at length. There's a lot of different angles to this. So I'm a
Yeah.
Muslim. My religion is Islam, so I can only speak, from that perspective and from that community's perspective. Um, and even within our community and our tradition, there's different interpretations, different understandings, and different methodologies for approaching different situations. So martial arts can be practiced in different ways. You have the traditional aspect of it, and the focus on the inner and the personality traits, things like patience, dedication, commitment, respect, just really go hand in hand with
Yeah.
my faith, and I'm sure most faiths out there as well. So as far as instilling those values into people and children and adults alike, it's perfectly cohesive with our religion. Even things like the regimen that you go through as a competitive athlete, um, being on a good diet, having mental toughness, following a schedule, having goals for yourself. These are also things that are positive things that really work well and go hand in hand with faith, I think. In the Islamic faith, like we have a whole month of the year where we fast. We don't eat or drink anything from sunrise to sunset. And we're following a lunar calendar, so that month moves about 10 days every year. So every 33 years or so, it cycles through the whole year, which means there's times when we're fasting in the middle of summer where the days are like 18 hours, no food or water.
Yeah.
And we still have day jobs, we still have gyms to
Yeah.
run. Sometimes we even keep training and working out, and we have families and such. That takes a lot of mental grit and determination.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's really the same mindset that an athlete would have if they're cutting weight or whatever. I have prayers. I have ritual prayers that I do 5 times a day, including at sunrise. And so it's very regimented and it's very structured, and it takes a lot of commitment to practice it in its full form. And I think those things really, again, coincide very closely with what it takes to be a successful martial artist. Now we move to competition. Here's where there can be some differences of opinion. Um, there are opinions within my religious community that causing physical harm to somebody unnecessarily or even to yourself is a sin, that it's not a good thing. Then there are also interpretations that it's okay because you're consented, and it's good to be brave. It's good to learn to be tough. It's good to be forced and pulled out of your comfort zone, and to enter into situations where you really have to dig deep and find the best version of yourself in order to succeed. And whether you win or lose that, you come out a stronger, braver, more capable person who is then able to serve your community better and do better to humanity
Yeah.
at the end of the day. That's the interpretation that I take. I think that, if you sit outside of a boxing ring or a Muay Thai or a kickboxing ring or an octagon, and you see two athletes in there, and yes, part of the game is to inflict harm to each other to win. It, it can look violent, it can look vulgar, it can look barbaric, but I think it really ultimately comes down to the interpretation of those athletes. In our tradition, there's many great historical figures, and there's a story that I came across recently. Again, it's one that I heard many times, but there's a historic figure that we revere a lot among many others. His name is Ali. Um, and there was a time when there was a battle. This is like 1400 years ago. So they're fighting with swords and arrows and horses and all that. And the city was being attacked, and so they were defending it. And he's fighting on the battlefield. He's this great warrior. And he sort of disarms his enemy, and he's about to sort of inflict the final blow. And the guy spits in his face right in that moment. And he stops and he lets go of the guy, and he withdraws. And the guy's so shocked, and he's like, "Well, you were just about to kill me. Why didn't you?" And his response, I think, is regardless of what faith you follow, it's really touching to me, and I think it's an important lesson. He said, "As I was fighting you, I was doing that in the name of God, in the name of my religion, in the name of what I felt was sacred and what I felt I stand for. But when you spat in my face, I got angry." And then I was worried that if I struck you now, I wouldn't be doing that for the same intention. I would be doing that for a personal reason, because of my
Mhm.
ego, because of my anger. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to do it for that reason. So I withdrew. Now, whether or not he actually killed the guy, I don't know. I don't know the rest of that story, but like that's a really touching thing to me, and it's something I think we should all continuously struggle with. Is why do we fight? Why do we train? Why do we compete?
Yep.
You go to these, and I'm sorry this is a long answer, but I
No,
think
no.
it's an important topic. Like you go to these events, you'll see athletes, you'll see coaches who enjoy hurting each other. And I've seen coach stand up front with their arms crossed with this really cocky, arrogant look on their face with a smirk, and then all the students are lined up behind them and they follow suit. And I overhear conversations like, "Yeah, I need that guy in the face, and he was lying there. He looked like he was," and they're like laughing about this, and they enjoy that. Like I never enjoyed that. I don't like hurting people. I enjoy the struggle. I enjoy the grind. I enjoy the element of risk that's there. That makes me dig deep and become a more capable person. But each his own. Like I'm the kind of fighter that if I was the kind of fighter that if I knew I was winning easily, I wouldn't intentionally try to go and harm that guy. I would want to carry them through. I mean, without putting
Yeah.
myself at risk. I've carried many opponents through that I probably could have stopped.
Yeah.
And I did that. And as soon as the fight was over, I raised their hand or I hugged them, whatever, because it's not about harming them. I get more fulfillment feeling like we got the best out of each other.
Yeah.
And like grinding him to a pulp in that match, if it was a mismatch, it doesn't give me anything and it doesn't give him anything. And I would rather see him learn from this and come back next time and be a stronger opponent and be a great athlete. And we become friends and maybe training partners one day. Like I find that more fulfilling. For me, it's all about the personal growth. That's how I sort of, justify it with my faith. And that's how it sort of ties together. So there's many other angles I can come at that and questions I'm sure that would come of this, but I'll put that out there and see what you guys have to say to add on.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. How about you, Akmal?
Love it. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, it is.
I really appreciate that. And so, I'm a Muslim as well, and when I was competing, I used to wear this gold chain with the thing says Allah in the middle of it. And so when I used to fight, you can't wear a chain around your neck. So what I used to do is we had a uniform, and then I used to tie that around my arm, and then put tape around it so that they couldn't inspect it. And so that was kind of like me keeping God close to me when I was competing. But obviously, as I get older, I start to question a lot of different things, and I wonder, does God take side, when it comes to these minor, minuscule things when there's such great, trials and tribulations around the world?
Yeah.
Especially if two Muslims are fighting each other, does God take side? And I know that everybody who has faith, before a match, they pray deeply, they play, they want that win. And so for me now, as I've grown up a little bit, I think about that, and I'm like, does it matter really to pray for a win before? Like, obviously you want it badly, but what does God really want for you? Does God want you to go out there and do it on your own, or does he want you to ask him for help, so then he will step forward and help you out? But as far as treatment of the other, of your opponent when it comes to faith, I've been through a lot of different scenarios. I've been to matches where I've been, kind and gentle, and then there are times where I've been a little bit aggressive. I've been a bit tough, and it's like, you go through all these different voids that you're trying to fill, as a combat athlete, and you want to make sure that you're learning from it. And yeah, sometimes it's you maybe you don't feel good about the way you handled that match, but at the end of the day, it's about points, it's about winning, and you want to get the win, and you come out. But now, as a father, do I how would I feel about that if my son is in the ring and he feels like he might get hurt? So then, as a coach, I step back and I say, well, you know what? I've been in that situation where I knew my athlete was going to get hurt really badly, and I threw in the towel right away. This is not about me or my ego. It's not about waiting for someone else to protect him. If I have that chance, I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm not going to wait for my student to come to me and say, this kid's going to hurt me. I see it, it's not fair, and I'm going to throw in the towel. And I'm going to give it a story, a specific story that have happened. I have a student named Gianluca, and Gianluca was not supposed to be this great fighter. But what made Gianluca great was his ability to work harder than everybody else. And so when we went first to the Canada Open, he was fighting against this kid named Eric, and Eric just came back from the World Championships. He had won bronze at the World Championships. And he was like toying with Gianluca the way a tiger would toy with a little deer before he hunts them down. And I could just see it. He's smiling in his face, and Gianluca is like panicking. He's in the corner, and I see it. His parents, I could see his parents are like, hugging each other, like what's going to happen to my kid? Like, and everybody knows Eric. Eric just won the bronze medal at the World Championships, 200 and something countries. And I just, boom, I just threw the towel in, and I gave him a hug, and I said, you did amazing. You did your job. We learned from it. Let's go forward. Fast forward a year later, we meet Eric in the at the provincials, and he takes Eric toe-to-toe to the sudden death. And sudden death is whoever gets the first point wins. And he was beating Eric like crazy. And nothing was scoring. But, Eric does a little tap, and Eric ends up winning. And we were ecstatic. We were like jumping up and down. Like, here we are a year before trying to survive, trying to keep our head on our shoulders. And here we are a year later taking the fight to Eric. And I think it's just about giving people a chance to grow and not putting your ego in there. Just being rational about it. And I think, yes, we can have faith that, there's, we're protected, but at the end of the day, we have to take everything in our own hands, because God has also given us a free will to make decisions that's going to be better for everybody around us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So well put.
Can I come back into that?
Yeah.
I think that was amazing. And for the sake of, I know we got 30% more time, right? Because Matt's
yes, right, we do.
But this is a deep one. I agree with Akmal that yes, winning a sport or a match is a trivial thing compared to all the other suffering and calamities that people are facing around the world. I don't think it's right, personally, to think, okay, because I believe that my faith is correct, that means that God is not with the other person. That's wrong. That's a terrible way for anyone in any faith to look at their fellow human being. That's what I think. That person may be closer to God or more spiritually elevated than I am, no matter what their outward appearance looked like, no matter what. If I was in their shoes, maybe I would be worse off. If they were in my shoes, maybe they'd be much better off. We don't know anyone's spiritual status or the relationship with God if you believe in God or the higher powers. So I also agree that you can pray all you want to win, and if you lose, does that mean that your prayer wasn't? I don't think that's right. I don't really know if it's right to pray to win and expect that necessarily, because we're here for such a higher purpose than that. Like, it's more important that you grow. I pray with my students before we go, and in traditional Thai culture, there's a prayer that you do and have the headpiece, the crown, and there's a lot of spiritual symbolism attached to that. When I'm with my athletes, I pray for their victory. I pray for their protection, and I pray that they grow both from inside the ring and outside the ring, and they get a victory in the ring and outside the ring. When I fight myself, I pray, I add that if it's good for me to win, give it to me. And if it's not good for me to win, don't give it to me. I pray that because I really have that much faith that I have to be that humble. Like, I can't expect God's just on my side and is going to give me this victory. That's the human being that has his own journey across the ring. It may be more important for him to get this win. It may be better for me in my development in a way that I don't understand to lose this match. Like at Akmal's athlete, if he had won that match against that student, would he have just thought he was all that and not put in the commitment and dedication to come back the next time he faced him to be so much greater and closer to defeating him? A loss that makes you humble and hungry and eager and smarter and wiser is much greater a victory than a win that makes you arrogant and foolish and reckless, right? So we don't know. Like the last time I fought, I was in Argentina. I hadn't fought in 10 years, and I took short notice. I jumped into Team Canada. I went to Argentina, and it was huge. I had 4 kids at home. I got a career to focus on, but I just wanted to do it before I get too old, and I tried. I got stopped in the first round, and I prayed, but there's a greater wisdom in that for me. Maybe it was better for that other guy to win. Maybe he has a higher purpose to fulfill by pursuing and winning that gold medal than I do. So that's how I look at it. It doesn't make me shatter my faith in any way if I get knocked out or lose or my athlete does. There's wisdom in it, and we can't be so arrogant to think that we understand what that wisdom is. So growth and victory happens on many different layers. If you're in the sport just to have a cool highlight reel on Facebook, then one thing. If you're in it for the reasons that a true martial artist would pursue training, then I think you would interpret things in a very different way.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, again, the guys, your point of views are always find is spot on, very, very deep, and always spot on all the time. And I totally agree with you guys 100%. Because for me, I remember my last part of my fighting years, I went into a kind of phase where it's like I got away from winning or losing. something else big going on here. And it's about myself. Am I getting better as a person? Am I become more aware of myself and the people? All these kind of things, kind of answering questions to go along. But I'm a big believer as well. You have to really examine yourself honestly. You got to leave the ego out of the equation altogether as much as possible. It's part of that battle we're all fighting internally is the ego. And of course, later on, we'll talk about emptiness, which is another good one.
The
Yeah,
unfortunate
it's all about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Akmal.
the unfortunate part of it is that, when we're desperate, we need something, we go to faith, we go to God, and that's I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah,
It's like, when I really wanted that match, I was going to God. But it's like, well, you know what, you have to have that relationship with God all the time. Don't wait for your desperate moments to be like, oh God, if you're out there, you got to give this to me.
yeah.
You
Please
got
help me.
Yeah, you got to have faith regularly, and you got to have that connection with God regularly. And I'm not saying how people should be, but I'm just looking back now, it's like, when you really need something, that's when you start to have faith. And I
Yeah,
think that's a flawed form.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to have faith in times of ease, to expect the help in times of difficulty, right? But that's human nature, right? Is that we're heedless and we're forgetful and we're self-absorbed by nature, I guess, to some extent.
Yeah,
It's an ongoing struggle, right? Life is a struggle.
yeah, it's a struggle.
Martial arts is a struggle, and I think
And that's part of
that's
the human condition right there, right? Is that again that battle we'll have, that battle in our own minds with the ego, and and that balance of where you should be, where you want to go, and keep those things in the proper alignment. And yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, great stuff there, guys, as always, as always. So yeah, we'll be able to bring Matt Ross on that one again in the future. That's the plan. So moving on, let's move on to another subject matter here, boys. Was there any fights at all this year that kind of grabbed your eyes? Because I know you guys do watch UFC fights and MMA fights and boxing fights here and there. Was there any fights at all this year kind of captured your attention, guys, in 2020?
So I guess maybe the main fight that I still remember back is Habib versus Justin Gage fight. That's
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the fact that he lost his father, had a tough time cutting weight and getting ready for this match. That really kind of stood out for me, and how focused he was and how quickly he kind of ended the match. I was actually pretty surprised. A lot of people thought that Habib was going to lose, that Habib wasn't able to focus. But I consider Habib to be a different type of beast. And again, he's going back to faith, incredibly a religious guy, an incredibly humble guy, and I really admire and respect him for that. To be honest with you, I didn't even know at the beginning that he was Muslim until he was fighting Connor. And during the weigh-ins, he said, "I know you guys don't like this, but I'm gonna say Alhamdulillah." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, actually, this Russian dude, from Dagestan, is actually Muslim," and I was quite surprised. But what surprised me more is that he is, maintained a certain level of humility throughout this entire time, and
Yeah,
I'm impressed with that.
yeah, me too, me too. Yeah, no doubt about that. Especially also leave the sport when you're right on top like that. He could have kept on going really, but I thought it was very smart, very 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 professional how he kind of ended it. And it was the last fight there was pretty amazing. But you, Zubair, anything kind of fights at all kind of stood in your mind?
that is the fight. That is the fight
Or was
really
that
that,
key
that
for
held
you?
my attention. I'm a big Habib fan too. Nobody's perfect. I think he's made mistakes and said things and done things like hopping the cage and socking people. I don't think was a good example, but he's human, right? And overall, I really respect the guy, and I think he's a great role model, regardless of what your faith is. If you have a faith or if you don't, I think he really embodies the humility of a true martial artist, and I appreciate him for that. He says Alhamdulillah, which literally means all praises are due to God, or to the higher being. That's what it means directly. The word Allah actually just means God in Arabic. Even people of the Christian and Jewish faith who speak Arabic, they use the word Allah to refer to God. And it actually existed even before Islam came to Arabia. So it's not like a different entity, the universal. But yeah, in addition to his character and why I liked that fight was even technically, like there was a lot of talk about, okay, so Gaethje he has this amazing takedown defense and he's like this phenomenal striker. Look what he did to Ferguson. Khabib can't do that. There's something to be said there technically because Khabib may not be the prettiest looking striker, but he can strike. And you'll
Yeah.
have athletes like that in every art,
Yeah.
who, when you watch tape of them or you look at them hit the pads, you're like, oh, that's not good. Like, I can beat that, because it's not textbook or it's not orthodox. But it
Right.
doesn't mean it's not effective and the athlete
Correct.
use it. Like, and what he's really good at is playing with the attention of the opponent. So he'd throw strikes, and it wasn't so much just the strikes that Gaethje was worried about. He was worried about the strikes, which were danger, which were posing an element of danger, but it was how fast Khabib could transition from a striking game to immediately shooting in. So like you could see Gaethje sort of dealing with the strikes, but half of his mind is like, oh crap, here comes the takedown, here comes the takedown. And he would play that, and it just burned him out. I feel like he exhausted mentally. He was in high panic mode because of the split of his attention. It's sort of like how you have the bar stool against the lion, and like, why does the lion get hypnotized by that? Because it's these four separate risks and it doesn't know which one to focus on, so it gets paralyzed. It's the same sort of thing. And when you take an opponent to a state of panic, that's when they overexert themselves, overthink things, make mistakes, and just burn themselves out. No matter how good their conditioning is, it will break them down. And Khabib was able to do that so calmly, like
Yeah.
effortlessly.
Yeah.
And that to me, like, it doesn't matter if his cross was a textbook cross and perfectly straight. Those are the surface things. But what was happening on a deeper level was a very sophisticated chess match, and that's why I appreciated that fight so much.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree with that, because that's part of the name of the game, is just distracting your man. Get inside his head, get his attention away from where you want to go with your strikes, and did all those things. And to me, that's just brilliant. I totally agree with you. Totally brilliant.
I'm sorry to admit that I'm sort of out of the loop with the whole boxing world this year, but I know there were some really good fights. Sorry, my kids are screaming in the background.
Oh, no problem at all. No.
Was there anything notable really in the boxing world that stood out to you, Coach?
The only one that I thought was interesting was was actually a few fights I thought were interesting. I should really rephrase that, but another one's kind of surprising was was watching Lomachenko fighting Lopez there. I think that was very, very interesting fight, watching a guy who I watched for years. I used to watch Lomachenko fight as an amateur and then go into his pro ranks. Watched it for years, and I've seen this guy just decimate people with these crazy angles. And all of a sudden, he gets this one opponent where you can see he has like no strategy. He had no plan. There was just no training for his opponent. He walked in there like he was like, I'm here, let's go. It's like a totally different guy showed up. It really kind of showed you like who he was, and he was in that moment, and the difference of those two people, and watching him like really just get beat. Actually, would actually say beat.
Do you think that's what it was, as his mindset coming into the fight, that he just wasn't the typical Lomachenko, or do you think it was that Lopez just had his number that day and had decoded the matrix? Like,
I think I firmly believe he didn't train for him. I really don't think he did, because he gave away 6 rounds. He gave away 6 rounds, which you can't do that at any level, and especially that level there. You're in a championship fight. You gave away 6 rounds for no real reason. And my thought was, you either got hurt in training, didn't say nothing at all, or you just didn't train for it. And then my take was, he didn't train for this guy. He's like, this guy's nothing. I'm gonna walk in there, get my easy win, go home. That's what it kind of looked like to me.
a loss that makes you humble can be better than victory that makes you arrogant, right? There it is.
And now he's like really quiet, right? Before like he's just very, very loud with all his training videos. Look at this, look at that. And now it's like where is he? What's he doing? Like, it's like a total opposite. So yeah, it kind of shows you how the ego sometimes gets too carried away with us and think you're too good. I don't need to train with this guy. This guy's come up to us quite young and hungry. He wants your title, he wants your belts, and you're not ready for it. So that's a very interesting little thing to watch. Watching, to me, a guy who's just totally dominant in his weight class, just really show almost like he didn't really care in that moment for that fight. He just wasn't there at all mentally or training wise. So yeah, that was kind of interesting.
I think maybe the notable fight. I think maybe the other notable fight was Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr.
That was actually, it was quite interesting.
Wait, was that a fight?
It was a charity fight, but it was interesting because you're watching. But it's a good point, because you're watching a real heavyweight like Mike Tyson. The guy's like 15 years old. He was like 200 pounds, right? Fighting a guy like Roy Jones Jr. got there organically over a long period of time. My point being, he's not a real born natural heavyweight. Fighting against a monster of a heavyweight of his time and being Mike Tyson. is watching those two train during the course of those fights. I was watching Roy Jones Jr.'s hand pad work, footwork, shadow boxing. See, with Mike Tyson, I was just so surprised how Mike Tyson looked so awesome right from the get go in his training. His hand pad work looked phenomenal. Footwork and shot box looked phenomenal. And watch Roy Jones Jr. I just watched really I was a big fan of Roy Jones Jr. for years in the early '90s. So I'm watching this guy doing hand pads and his footwork used to be absolutely amazing. Now I watch this guy, like in his early 50s. It's like, who is this guy? He's like not the same guy anymore. It's like watching an old man trying to emulate Roy Jones Jr. in training. That's what it looked like for me watching him fight or watching him train for the fight. And so it was kind of cool to watch that whole thing unfold in the actual ring. But it was a shame. It couldn't have been a real fight because it was a charity fight going into it. So we all kind of knew there'd be no winner. There couldn't be any knockdowns either based on the rules. So it's very kind of a interesting setup. But it was an exhibition fight. It's a charity fight, so you can't have those things happen. But it was amazing to watch Mike Tyson look so great and do so well at 53 years old. After a long, 15-year hiatus from the ring. I was pretty impressive. What do you guys think of that? You guys watch that matchup? You guys, what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, go ahead, Akmal.
Yeah, I watched that match and I was actually pretty impressed. And I think what what Mike Tyson said is that he's like he came back to life because he had an opportunity to get back in the ring. And I think a lot of athletes have a hard time transitioning back to kind of like a normal life after their competitive careers are done, especially someone as high profile as Mike Tyson. You do a whole bunch of different stuff. You can make money in all different ways, but it's like your heart lies in the ring. You come to life in doing the thing that you're so passionate about, and the mind game, the psychology, all the different things that he does to get into the game and to do it, and then to be able to have that opportunity again to get into the ring and have that fun again. I think that's what he was
missing.
Really impressive to see that.
Yeah, agreed. I enjoyed watching watching him in action. He looked really good. Well, guys, go for one more question here. Let's talk about emptiness. Ooh, emptiness. So, of course, we're not talking about the emptiness of North America, which is a totally different meaning that we're talking about here on the show, which is basically, to me, it's like the ultimate of training at a high level is when you really kind of let go of all those things you've learned. Now you're kind of working off of your intuition and your will. All those kind of intangible elements now come to place, which I kind of refer to as being emptiness. When you're letting go, you're just kind of being the water in the vessel. You're just kind of moving as things move towards you. I'll ask you guys, what is your take on emptiness in training? I'll start with Akmal.
So I'm a big believer in sports psychology. So actually during when I was a coach, I actually worked with the University of Toronto's sports psychology department. I used to take my athletes there, once a month just to sit with some of their professors and be able to discuss. And these are like teenagers, right? They didn't really understand it. But one of my students actually took that really to heart, and he actually kept all their handouts, kept all their notes, majored in psychology, and now he has his own company called Mindlock Training, which I'm really impressed to see that. He's very young, but he's incredibly ambitious and very thoughtful and very articulate when it comes to the sports psychology of it. So for me, the emptiness, the empty mind is really about being able to channel your thoughts directly. Now, obviously, we can never shut the brain off. The brain is always moving, always has something, and a whole bunch of thoughts going on in your mind at the same time.
Yeah.
But what makes emptiness so special is to be able to focus on one thought at a time. Being able to maybe focus on your breathing. Because when we're silent and we're just focusing on breathing, we are eliminating a lot of unnecessary thoughts. Did I leave the stove on? Did I do my homework? Is my work gonna fire me? A whole bunch of stuff is going on. But if we have a focus, and that focus is to be present in the training, then we need to have an empty mind. And the empty mind, to me, what it really means, and maybe that's a North American way of explaining it, is that being able to control your thoughts. And you can control your thoughts by focusing on your breathing, focusing on sound, or focusing on a certain sensation that you're going through at the moment. But I find the most effective way is to focus on breathing.
That's a great point. Great point. Yeah, that's such a good way to kind of start kind of igniting that part of you is basically through your breathing. That's a great point. Yeah. How about you, Zubair? What does that mean? What does emptiness mean to you, sir?
I gotta apologize. There's some background music going on downstairs. I got 4 kids in the house. I don't know,
It's all
but
good. We
it's
get
hard. It's hard to practice emptiness with all this noise. But
it.
let me take it from a completely different angle. Let's talk about um, emptiness in the heat of the moment
It's a good one.
of say a competition. So we talk about being in the zone, right? And what that means, I think, sort of relates to this concept of emptiness in traditional martial art. And it's to not overthink things, to be at an elevated enough level of stress that you're on high alert,
Yeah.
and that your mind and your body and your reflexes are primed, not being too high above that threshold where things start to break down, but also not being too low that you're not
Yeah.
prepared. So in my experience, from what I've read and from what I've seen from my athletes, when an athlete's not in that correct sort of state of mind, that I guess you can call it the state of flow, the zone, or the adequate state of emptiness, and they have too much emotion, whether it's ego or it's fear or it's um, anxiety or anger. Sometimes athletes bring that into the ring, and it sort of messes with where they need to be in that adequate, that optimal
Yeah.
zone of stress, because there's good
Yeah.
stress too, if that makes sense so far.
Sure
When
does.
they're not, they either end up overthinking. So how that looks is you'll have an athlete who, when you see them on the pads, they look so smooth, so clean, and everything flows automatically, and it's cohesive, and um, it's in unison. But when they go to throw in the ring, and when they're in a state of over anxiety, it's almost like you'll see just the arm move, but there's no rotation of the hips. So
Mm-hmm.
like why does that happen? Or the hands just kind of freeze like this, and it's very robotic. Why does that happen? It's
Yeah.
often because they're in a state of stress too high above that threshold, so they start to overthink.
Yeah.
And really, we don't think about our movements in that level of detail ever, except for when we first learned it. When you first learn how to, like, I teach my kids at home how to hold their stands and their kicks and stuff. I have to repeat: twist your foot like this, step on this angle, shift your weight here, keep this hand up, swing this one back, keep your chin tucked in, chin sandwich between your glove and your shoulder, like answer the phone, whatever. Again, but there's a lot of like repetition, because they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And they have to think about it consciously to make it work. But then they should get to a point where it just feels, they know it's wrong. Intuitively, they feel it's wrong when they're doing it wrong, and it just flows naturally without thinking about it. So like, you watch Coach Noel's pad work, it's so fluid. Like he'll spit a combination, jab, jab, cross, cross, across, and go pa 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 pa. They're not thinking about any one of those steps. It's very automatic because it's so well rehearsed.
Yeah.
But now you enter into the ring and you're in the state of high anxiety. You're not in an empty state anymore. You're overthinking because of your fear, your anxiety, or your anger, or whatever it is. So you're
Yeah.
like, oh, my glove has to hit his face, and I gotta throw it at him. And you're overthinking. Your tunnel vision at one small aspect of that whole movement, right?
Yeah.
Or they underthink.
Yeah.
And that's when you see athletes just kind of stand there and like their head snapping back as they're taking jabs, and there's no reaction at all. It's almost like they're hoping that their reflexes will take over, and it doesn't, because they're
Correct.
they're
Yeah.
they're
Wrong
not in
state of
that
mind.
optimal zone. They're not adequately empty. There's too much emotional baggage
Yeah.
being carried into the ring. So, and that takes practice. So it takes a lot of rehearsing. There was a really good book I read the first half of. It was called The 2 Second Advantage, and it's actually a business book, and it's all about how do you sort of have the foresight to be 2 steps ahead of your competition in business. But the first half of the book talks about Wayne Gretzky and how he was small, he was weak, he was slow, but he coined this term: "Don't go where the puck is, go where it's going to be." And he
Yeah.
learned how to see the patterns that were unfolding on the ice before him, so he just knew where to be, and he would score all these goals, and he wouldn't get hurt, and he was a superstar. Um, but the book talks a lot about psychology and this concept of chunking and sort of like pattern recognition. Um, at the beginning, you have to take each little bit of information consciously, and then slowly you learn to chunk them together into one chunk. And it's like a string of information, or like think about an elaborate combination that you might throw on the pads or in a competition. And then eventually you get to this point where one trigger will allow you to unfold that entire package automatically. So, you throw a jab and your opponent slips it, automatically you have pop, 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 pop that follows it, 5, 6 step sequence,
That's right.
just so well rehearsed. And that
Yeah.
can't be a conscious process in the heat of the moment. But if you have that emotional baggage, like, I gotta hurt this guy, or oh my God, I don't want to get hurt, or what are people gonna think, or how's this gonna look on Facebook, or I gotta win that gold medal, or whatever it is, like you exit that optimal zone of stress. So anyway, I can go on and on about it, but I think that's where it's most striking to me when we talk about this concept of emptiness in terms of how it relates to competition.
Yeah. But again, the great points, because I do find it's harder to actually reach that today with today's athletes because of the fact we deal with more stresses, I think, than we ever did before with students. I don't know about you guys, but that's been my experiences. I just way more stressed students in general. It comes to life, what's going on in the world, and of course technology and everything else.
But I
I
think
do find it's kind of hard to actually reach that level with your students. I'm finding, so I have to kind of for myself. I try to use like more of a simpler sort of like always just remember how you did the hand pads, how you did that sequence, and how to kind of lead to the next sequence. Just remember how it felt to you when you did it. What it kind of feel to you with that moment? Was that experience for you? Those kind of things kind of go back to like an emotional experience for them to help come back to that zone. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, it was like this. Oh yeah, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I kind of bring them back in, got to reel them back in every so often. Like, no, 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 don't go there. You want to do this, right? So yeah, that's what I find helps a lot too. Is this kind of having recur, like you're saying, using those the chunks idea. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant way of putting it, and phrasing it, because that's kind of what we're trying to
Well,
essentially do.
I've watched you, Coach Joel, run classes at our gym, and that's exactly what I see. Like you'll hold your athlete with one, I'll call it a sequence, right?
Yeah,
Your pad work is very interactive. It's not just the guy striking the pads. Pad holders sometimes even doing more movements than the striker is in some of your
yeah,
sequences. And you repeat it and you let them go and go and go, and they get a great work out of it because it's so much repetition. But it's really ingraining it to the point where it's automatic. And you come back 2, 3 weeks later and you look at the athletes who've been in your classes regularly, and it's just flowing like bang, 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 bang. And you see them spar and they don't even have to think about it. It's just there. Someone throws a jab and there's like a 5 striker response like automatically. It's really brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. To me, like when I see those classes, I'm like, wow, this is the epitome of that concept of chunking, sequencing, and making things automatic. Like really brilliant stuff.
yeah. That's brilliant, boys. As always, it's just great talking with you guys. And so next time we'll come back sooner, guys, with Matt. We'll get Matt on the show again, and we'll get you guys back on the show as soon as possible. We think, late January. Can we do that? Is that a date?
sounds great.
Excellent, excellent. Very good, very good. Well, hey guys, thanks for being on the show today. As always, a great pleasure. And I think we should explore those topics again a little bit more in more depth, because with Matt too.
Yeah. Yeah, we get a Christian perspective instead of us Muslim.
That's right. You gotta do those topics really, really well. So, boys, thanks for joining me today. Thanks, Zubair, and thanks, Akmal. Always a pleasure. And I'm glad Santa was good to you guys, and the holidays were good to you as well. That's very good to hear. Hopefully 2021 will be good to you as well, guys. Oh, bless those thoughts there. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching the Knockout Show. The show can also be heard on the Barber Radio Network on almost 122 platforms. Please check out the barber.ca for all the news. Barburner, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thank you guys, and thank you everyone.